Hello, my name is Jack Finnegan. I directed Ramona Quimby for First City Players, and I'm here today with Addie Epler, who played Ramona Quimby, and Peter Epler, who played her dad, Bob Quimby, and this is Behind the Curtain. So, Peter, this was not a first time on the stage for you, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Couple shows with First City Players before this one. Ramona Quimby was the third, and we got Charlotte's Web last year, and the year before that, Little Mermaid.
But you have some experience in the theater beyond First City Players, is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah. It was my original major back in college, and so I've done some Shakespeare, I've done some comedies, I've done pretty much been on stage since I was about Addie's age. Just loving it since then. So.
And Addie, this was not your first production with First City Players, but your first major role, is that correct?
Yeah.
What were some of the other shows you were in?
Charlotte's Web and Little Mermaid.
And what roles did you play in those shows?
In Little Mermaid, I was a sea snail and a seagull. And in Charlotte's Web, I was a baby spider and a gosling.
So what was it like taking over a major role in a show like this one?
It was great. I was really excited when I first saw the cast list. We were on an airplane, so I actually didn't know until we landed.
When you found out that you had the role?
Uh-huh.
We found out a little bit ahead of time, and we were trying to decide, do we tell her early or do we wait? How do we do this? And as parents, we could not wait to tell her. So as soon as we got off the plane, we revealed the news, and she kind of freaked out in the Seattle airport, and it was awesome.
It's really incredible. The multi-generational show that we have with First City Players, it's a great opportunity to have both younger and adult players on stage together. We get a lot of novice players. I think we had 8 or 9 people who were new to the stage or new to principal roles with this show. And we also had, I think, 8 different family groupings. So Peter and Addie were family members. Natalie and Bria Kastner and Gavin Kastner, there's 3 family members all in one show. We had several pairs of siblings, brother and sister. And it's really a great way to get members of the community working with their family members on the fun of a production. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed about being a part of this show. And we sort of jokingly called the Quimby family, it was sort of our Brady Bunch Quimbys, because Peter and Addie made up one half of that family, and then Natalie and Bria Kastner, who I mentioned, played Dorothy and Beezus Quimby. So we had these 2 family groupings making up the larger Quimby family.
We learned in my social science class that a recession exists in this part of the country.
You can tell your social science class that it walked right into your living room and sat right down on the chair.
Dad, does this mean you're not going back to the North Pole to be Santa's helper ever again?
I never really liked the North Pole. It was cold in there.
We're all gonna be homeless and live in our refrigerator box.
What?
I saw it on TV.
Oh, Ramona, don't be silly.
I'm not being silly. I'm being scared.
What was it like for you to work together as family members?
I love it.
It was good. It was a different kind of experience. We've worked on stage before, but in separate roles in kind of different spheres. But this time around, we got to work very closely together in a father-daughter role, which we share naturally throughout the rest of the course of life, but as different people. And so that kind of added a different dynamic of life together, because Bob is not Peter and Ramona is not Addie, though we share similarities.
I have a lot of similarities.
You do have a lot of similarities to Ramona.
What might some of those be?
I don't pay very much attention in school. I pay half of my attention to that and another half to something random.
Yeah. There's a big time commitment for both of you, though.
Yes.
A lot of, 5 weeks of rehearsal.
Yeah, and I think I was aware of the time commitment, and having been in roles before that required time commitment. Addie's, this was a significant step up for time commitment for her, to be in rehearsal every night for 5 weeks. And then the line load was, as a dad, I was nervous. How is my 9-year-old going to do carrying a chunk of lines? And I was quite impressed by the sponge nature of small children's brains, the ability to retain and emote all of those lines was quite impressive.
And not just lines, but also blocking that I would give. And Peter and I talked not long ago about how Addie and Bria and some of the other youngsters that were in the show, it's amazing how, you know, when I'm acting in a role, I'm constantly making notes in my scripts, just trying to remember where the director's asked me to be, where my fellow players are going to be, where furniture might be. But I would give a note with respect to movement to Addie and her fellow players. They wouldn't jot a thing down. It might be 3 days before we'd rehearse that scene again, but they would remember exactly what I'd asked them to do.
It was magical.
It was magical. It's astonishing. Yeah, it was a huge cast. Though. It was 42 people in the show. That's just players on stage. It doesn't even account for all the many incredible volunteers that we had working backstage. Everything from designing lights to building props to painting sets and so on. Just an amazing team of volunteers, which is one of my favorite things about First City Players is that when there's a show coming together, people come out of every corner and lend, whether it's many, many hours or just one bit of expertise, people do whatever they can to make the show work. But working with a cast this large, the thing that I think I've talked about, or that I did talk about most frequently when I was explaining the experience to others, was what a sweet group of people it was, how cooperative. You know, 42 people, 36 minors, and we had very few disruptions, which you'd expect many.
Right.
With a huge bunch of kids like that, but everyone was pretty on board.
It actually became a family unit, a large extended family unit. And on the backside of the show now, we miss each other. And we've developed what I love to think of lifelong relationships now. We see each other and we have a deeper, richer community in Ketchikan because of the relationships we formed on the show. So.
Which is absolutely one of the goals for First City Players, and the multi-gen in particular, because it does tend to draw a larger group of people, and often people who are new to the stage. So what do you think, Addie? After a big role like that, you think you'd want to do something like that again?
Yes.
Excellent.
Anything that was particularly challenging about being in a big role like that?
Nothing that can come to my mind right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What was your favorite part of the rehearsal process?
I liked getting to see friends that I saw from a really long time ago. Like people in the cast that I used to know as really good friends, and then I moved schools. And it's like, yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah, I think we had probably students from every elementary school, from Holy Name, from Fawn Mountain, from Heltling, from
all over
Point Higgins,
Ketchikan.
all over Ketchikan. Yeah, which helped too with carpooling, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, we were excited about Ramona Quimby. It was actually, I think it was 2 weeks before we opened that Beverly Cleary, who wrote the series of books around the character Ramona Quimby, celebrated her 103rd birthday. She's still with us today.
Which is amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And there's a lot has been written about how some of the storylines that she created for her books about this character, Ramona Quimby, were semi-autobiographical. Ramona's a spunky kid, a little mischievous, can be a little stubborn sometimes, has a fantastic imagination. And the story, though it's titled Ramona Quimby, is really told by her older sister, Beezus. And Beezus is a little more serious. She's a little older. She's getting ready to be a grown-up. She's got some years to go yet. But the wonderful thing about having a story about a family told from the kid's perspective was that it allowed us a lot of room for whimsy, for an incredible fantasy sequence. Ramona's dad, Bob, loses his job, and this creates some anxiety for the family. Dorothy, the mom, has to get a job, which is a first for the Quimbys. And Bob's home. He's taken up the old nasty habit of smoking cigarettes. Yeah. He and Ramona are sitting around watching TV one afternoon, and they see a commercial with a kid in it. And Bob makes some comment about this kid probably making $1 million for that commercial. And Ramona gets a big idea in her head that she's going to get cast in a commercial and make her family $1 million. But Camille McRoberts, who did our set design, and Barbara Morgan, who assisted with the building of this particular piece of our set, created an enormous television set that we were able to bring out onto the stage. So every time there were 2 commercials and then a fantasy sequence of a commercial being filmed. We had this huge Zenith television set.
It's phenomenal. The
huge.
knobs on the TV were gigantic.
Yeah.